Dijeron igualdad, pero esta vez me separaron. Dijeron mucho, pero no se olvidaron de callarse. Cuánto odio por mi piel sembraron. Dijeron historia y la tergiversaron. Dijeron guerra, muerte, odio y nos culparon. Enfermedades, epidemias nos contagiaron. Exterminación de mi fauna complace a tus mercados. Dijeron riqueza y todo se lo robaron. Oro, platino, diamante, a la fuerza se lo llevaron. Y la actualidad es tan triste que todo aquello que dijeron es lo mismo que hoy se dice más. ¿Quién dice, quién explota, quién se beneficia? El asesino, el mismo que da las noticias. Hay una cuenta fácil que siempre me da las grandes riquezas, de dónde vienen y hasta dónde van.
Independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao, independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao. Nati Dre es afroresistencia, cultura ancestral, afrodescendencia, solidaridad. Esa es la esencia, la diáspora africana eleva la conciencia, conciencia negra, universal, progresista y transcultural. Negros y mestizos revolucionando, pueblos caribeños y africanos en un solo bando. No más explotación, colonialismo interno, no más confusión, supremacía blanca en el Babilón. Soy rojo, negro y verde, afroliberación. Mientras más negro, más represión. Somos creadores, recupera tu visión. Mi visión es educar con amor, contra el silencio, vivo sin temor. Independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao, independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao.
Jamming out to the music.
right. Me and you both in our little boxes, just, you know. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good today. You know, I'm just trying to come down. You know, sometimes like you have all this energy.
Yeah.
That is from like days of just working, and you got to like bring yourself down. So that's what I'm working on.
I had to acquire I know exactly what you're talking about, because I had to acquire a new way of going about like even researching. First and foremost, to everybody that's watching, this is the Rise Up Morning Show. My name is Isaac Jasper. This is Natasha X, as I call her, Natasha X. And this is not the Rise Up Show. This is the Libra Effect. Remember,
right.
when it's me and Natasha on, this is the Libra Effect. This is no longer the Rise Up Show.
The Rise Up Morning Show Libra Effect edition. So anytime you see us, know that this is the Libra Effect edition.
Always a pleasure to be on screen with you, whether if it's just me and you, or whether whether we're with with those knuckleheads. For lack of a better term. We got giggles in the first 5 minutes. Yay.
You gotta, the thing about the work that we do is you gotta be able to laugh and smile, because it can't be all gloom and doom. Like, that's not the kind of life, and that's not the kind of way that we know that struggle is. Like, we know that within struggle there is still joy and happiness and love and all of those things. Like, that's what keeps it going. That's what is really powers and continues to motivate us. So I think all the giggles. I'm here for all the giggles.
Exactly. That's what I said in the last episode, and I said a lot in that last episode because I think it was very clear for us to set standards on how you speak to people, especially grown-ass men, grown women. I think there's a certain amount of respect that was lacking with some of the individuals in the comments, and so that's all that I'll leave that to. We're gonna laugh because, again, some of the shit we say is gonna be funny, and we are going to, in some capacity, give you from a different perspective, a different way of doing things is what I like to see it. I've never seen a network really do what we've done, especially at the rate that we have. And so I just want to, for one, give us, the props, the kudos, the flowers, for our work, man. Like, I feel like, in the midst of trying to get all of the analysis out, try and put the correct narratives out there. You have to at the same time make sure that you don't lose yourself in there by being so and hello, welcome to the Rise Up Morning Show, and I'm on today. Like, I know a guy that has his own show, and it works in his favor, but it's because he has a face that just like he naturally talks that way. Like, it's
it
not
might also be his personality. That's the other thing, right?
Exactly. I'm not a type of person to be gloomy. I like to make these. I am the one, I feel, out of all of us that try and catch each other off guard for funny little like blooper, whatever it may be. Whether it, I want to go back and say, hey, Kalanji, I'm gonna make a video in regards to bloopers and stuff like that of us laughing and us joking around and showing the brighter side of what we do and how we interact with each other. I'd like to do that instead of it being every day I'm kidding on. It's like, oh, hi, my name is Isaac Jasper, and I'd like to show you guys exactly what, like, that's so monotone.
But I mean, but also the thing is about it, like, there's no place that you're going to go, meaning like there's no platform, whether it's on YouTube or whether it's on television, where people are journalists and presenting news, that they're not going to engage with each other, that they're not going to laugh. Like, you see that on any news platform that you look at, any place that you're looking at.
There's an episode I did with Fernando and our comrade Vlad, who's a part of a Pan-African organization, and they run a show called Havana Negra. They actually just released a show where they spoke to some Afro indigenous individuals from what is called or classified Mexico. And so I highly advise you guys to go and check that out. Again, shout out to Vital Hoops Podcast, shout out to Havana Negra, shout out to our comrade Fernando. He's a vital part, to plug that in there. He's a vital to the Rise
Vital Hoops, vital part.
Vital Podcast. There was a moment where I caught Vlad sipping coffee, and it was like 3-4 times I let it pass. I was like, I heard and I was like, I gotta take this moment. And I was like, hey, Vlad, I was like, that coffee must be hot as shit. I was like, because like it reminded, and it's funny because it reminded me like of something that my brother used to do to irritate my mom, which was to sip hot cocoa in front of her ear, like behind her, like come about, just stupid little prank.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Yeah. And so that's why, like, I'll never step away from that, and I'm glad that, like, at least you're in agreement with me, and Ikemba was too. To allow the giggles to continue. As there's a giggle gate going on right now, and I don't know. No, we're gonna get to some seriousness. I did want to, if you wanted to, we'll at the end of this show, but also in the beginning, let's start queuing up or start tagging, some things that are happening. Is there something in your area that you'd like to highlight? Let the viewers know. We're barely in the first 8 minutes, so I know that there's some people here. I know people are watching. I know people are tuning in. They're like Michael Jackson with popcorn in his mouth and Thriller. Just sitting back watching the show. So I know people are here, nonetheless. So if there's anything you'd like to highlight, coming up event wise. So
let me look into my thing, because I have like a million, it's early and I have a million things in my mind already. So let me look real quick, just to I know that there are it's like it never stops. Like, obviously the work never stops. There's always something going on.
Yeah, like I'll find that. I'll plug in right now that O'Malley, Ishtella, and the Uhuru 3. You can write letters, as there is a sentencing that happens in December. They move the date a little forward. So this is very huge. It could, from my knowledge, it could be anywhere from 5 years to time served if given probation or on probation currently. I really advise everybody to write their letters out. Make them bold, legible, and easy and accessible to read. and also, do it at a high mass. I would even advise people to write multiple letters. I was doing the same during the Imam Khalifa. I was calling multiple times until the phones inevitably, for me, went busy. So yeah.
Okay, so yeah. Oh, go no,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead and finish because
No.
I like to show the people the visuals. I like a good visual. So
Right.
I'm just getting them queued up. They'll be
uh,
up in a
I don't
1
have
second.
I don't have relatively anything in my local area to share. I might be at an event in Los Angeles coming up on the 2nd in regards to Leonard Peltier, but working on that with the ad hoc committee. And so, yeah, really, really proud of the work that we do there. I got an update on Leonard, but there's some things that I just can't legally disclose. I will say that the situation is relatively the same in some aspects, and then in some aspects it has gotten worse. And so I'm hoping that maybe in the next, continuing months that I'll have a clear report for you guys in order to give you guys what's going on. But for now, just know that Leonard is alive. Leonard still is asking for a call to action in regards to freeing himself. And his ad hoc committee, which consists of myself and Kalanji and Jennifer Jones, his lawyer, Don Lawson, a multitude of other individuals. I'm forgetting names right now. Susie, Paulette. These are individuals that work and have worked on the committee for years. So I'm newly found to it, but we are getting things in line, and we should have a well-rounded report regarding the legal situation of Leonard Peltier. But as far as for medical and personal, just know that Leonard really, really appreciates the solidarity and just wants it to continue. And for all calls of action, whether that be for his, medical bills and finances, to be covered if there's, any of those that arise, which they, are and will. You can go to free Leonard Peltier on Instagram, and there should be the links to all of that as well. Again, that's free Leonard Peltier on Instagram. And so I hope I got that right, for the viewers that are watching that are from the ad hoc community committee. So yeah, just that's my Boona report for you guys.
I'm gonna share my screen just to
Go ahead.
Bring them up real quick. So I want to make sure that I'm okay. Yeah, I know what I'm so that people can get the visuals. We'll start first with this event. So there is an event. This is not happening this weekend, but it will be happening Friday, November 15th. Harlem, Palestine Peace Walk for Justice and Liberation. And there will be also a community dinner that will also be happening. So you can go ahead and check that out. The location is still to be determined, but they have another peace walk on the 22nd. So this is one of the things that's going to be happening. We'll probably show that again. And then I'll also point out that there is, I wanted to just switch it around, but I don't think it's going to let me. Yeah, so let me and I'll share the other event that is happening as well. This one is actually going to happen this weekend. If you're in Houston, please check out the Curb Fest for political prisoners happening in Houston, Texas, this Saturday from 1 to 7 p.m. And it's going to be at the Shape Community Center in Texas. So if you're tuning in from Texas, please check it out. If you're not tuning in from Texas, but some people who are from Texas or live in Texas, check it out as well. Have them check it out. If you're gonna be in Texas, stop by. If you're gonna be visiting Texas this weekend as well. And if you're not too far from Texas, like you live in close proximity but not exactly in that state, check it out. It's supposed to be a very dope event. This is the last Curb Fest of the year. So make sure you check that out. Those are the two things. Oh, also next, not this week, but we'll be talking about it next week. But this is just to let people know in advance so you could start preparing. Black Solidarity Day is coming up so we know that the election is happening November 4th. And so every year, the election's happening November 5th, right? That's the election day is a Tuesday, right? Yeah, election day. Yeah, I'm correct. Election day is Tuesday. So on November,
the whole time. Sorry.
So on November 4th, always the day, that Monday before election day, is Black Solidarity Day. So it's a day of no school, no work, no shopping by the Black community in order to show the strength and the impact that Black people make, so we can really show what our presence means and what our participation means when it comes to the electoral politics.
Mhm.
And so we use that day to talk about particularly our situation as a people. How does it relate to the politics that are going on, and have those discussions, even though we know we've been having those discussions for a while. Even before it gets to actual election day, Black Solidarity Day is a day to remind us as a Black community and remind the world, in the particular local areas that we live in, but also in general, how that resounds more further beyond our local areas about the power and the contribution of African people within, particularly it started in New York, but I'm working to so we can do something next week to really get people to understand the where Black Solidarity Day started, and its history.
Ooh, that was equivalent to she sells down by the
right?
seashore.
And so how it started, where it is now, and what we should be doing moving forward. So just priming you now to remember Black Solidarity Day. Don't go to school, don't go to work, don't shop on the 4th of November.
Yeah, let's see. Okay, we got a special guest joining us, Ikemba.
A special guest? I don't know he's a special guest. You mean a comrade who's supposed to be here.
He'll be popping in shortly. Just put your camera on when you're ready to pop in, comrade, and then I'll bring you up.
It's like when people go to your house and they're like, oh, by the or when you go to somebody's house, or when somebody comes to your house and you're like, okay, by the third visit, you're no longer a guest. You are.
You
go to the fridge and get your own stuff.
We're gonna take a quick break for Black Power, and then when we come back, Natasha is going to roll out an article regarding Sudan, and we're going to cover that, give our perspective, and hopefully by then, Comrade Dr. Belante will be joining us, and we'll keep the ball rolling. But until then, enjoy this break for Black Power. Here I go.
I know. It's early. You get a pass because it's early.
Right. Break for Black Power. We'll see you guys in a little less than 6 minutes.
Center of the discussions has always been Africa. This must be properly understood. Some people try to shift it, take it somewhere else, but Africa has always been the focus. Du Bois carried on his congresses up until the 5th Congress in 1945. Because of time, we're just going through them quickly. In 1945, saw the 5th Pan-African Congress. Here, you had Africans born on the continent, in the Caribbean, and Africans, of course, born in Europe and the United States. At this 5th Pan-African Congress, there were 3 co-secretaries, of course, W.E.B. Du Bois, George Padmore of Trinidad, and Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana. So you had an African from the Caribbean, one from the United States, and one from the continent, who were co-secretaries of the 5th Pan-African Congress. The 5th Pan-African Congress is crucial for us. A decision was made there. They said that the final confrontation with colonialism is coming. After all, this is 1945, and you must know that there's negative and positives in everything. I remember once as a young man reading Mein Kampf on an airplane sitting next to a woman. She said, "What are you doing?" I said, "What do you mean what I'm doing? I'm reading Mein Kampf." "Why are you reading it?" I said, "Well, Hitler's a very important man. He had historical effects on the world, you know." She said, "Well, I'm a Jew." I said, "Have you read it?" She said, "No." I said, "Oh, that's bad." I said, "Have you not read Sun Yat-sen?" She said, "No." I said, "He says the first law of war is to know the enemy. If I were a Jew, I would read everything there is to read on Hitler." Of course. Of course. So, while reading Hitler, she was arguing. I said, "Well, Hitler had some positive effect anyway." She said, "What positive effect did Hitler have?" I said, "Hitler weakened European imperialism. He weakened the British, he weakened the French, he weakened the Portuguese, he weakened the Belgians, and that's how we got independence." And these are facts of life. These are facts of life. When Hitler got through with Britain, when the Indians said they want independence, Britain could do anything but get out the way and let them have independence. Matter of fact, they got Mahatma Gandhi quick because they didn't want to deal with the armed struggle that the Indians were preparing for British imperialism in India. And by the time India was free, well, it was over. China came up. After China, of course, Africa throughout, etc., etc. And by 1960, in 15 short years of the declaration of the Fifth Pan-African Congress in 1945, 2/3 of the African continent was independent. You must understand clearly the importance of this. Now, at the Fifth Pan-African Congress, they said the only solution to the final confrontation is mass organization. And I say, if you look at Africans, we have nothing but mass character in our struggles. Of course, this mass character for the moment is spontaneous and must be transformed to something that is planned and permanent. But certainly the mass character is there. If you just look back to the Rodney King situation, those Africans who rebelled en masse. They had no planning. That's how backward they were. They didn't think about it. Just on the spot, they say, "Okay, it's too much. Let's go. Let's get them." And everybody says, "Okay, let's get them." And we rise up as mass and we get them. And then we sit down for 29 years. Of course. Of course. But the mass character is there, and we must understand this mass character. The Fifth Pan-African Congress, most of Africa, of course, was colonized. Kwame Nkrumah came to change all this. By 1958, he threw the British out of Cape Coast and named it Ghana. And Nkrumah declared before the entire world that the independence of Ghana is meaningless unless it's linked with the entire continent of Africa and its unification and liberty. And Ghana, Nkrumah made Ghana the base for every movement that fought against colonialism. Mugabe, who's now the head of Zimbabwe, where was he trained? In Ghana. Go and ask all of them. Nkrumah set up freedom schools, teaching them how to use arms to go and fight. It was Nkrumah who built the base and pushed Pan-Africanism. He understood that Africa was divided in 1865 at the Berlin Conference, and that we cannot accept visions imposed upon us by our enemy. Africa is one, we must unify her. This has been the task. Of course, since Nkrumah, the movement picked up. The independence of Guinea came in the same 1958, later that year, and with Sekou Touré and Kwame Nkrumah, the movement really coalesced force. The Pan-African movement, of course, was not going to be left alone. Imperialism would seek to divide it. That's their job. Sekou Touré says, if the enemy is not doing anything against you, that's because you're not doing anything. Of course. Matter of fact, when they're not doing anything against me, I get scared. What am I doing wrong? So their job was to divide, and if you will look, they divided the Pan-African movement in what was called the Casablanca bloc and the Monrovia bloc, the revolutionaries and the reactionaries, to put it in one simple word. Of course, the Casablanca group included the fighting forces in Algeria, the FLN, which the other African states refused to recognize. Of course, Nasser had to be in it. Of course, Nkrumah. Of course, Sekou Touré, Tunisia, and of course, Mohammed V in Morocco, who had just waged serious war to get independence away from the French. The other group was called the Moderate Group, and they were all made up of reactionaries and scum of our race who didn't want African unity, and there was a million problems and sabotaged it and worked for imperialism against the interests of their people, and that still continues today. I always say one of the weaknesses of the African Revolution is that we are the only people who allow our enemies to strut with impunity amongst us. It's only because of our weakness. It's only because of our weakness.
All right.
Rise up.
Rise up. Well, welcome, Emba.
In the building.
What's going on? You got any news for us? Any updates? Any Anything?
Nah, just
connected
yo,
with?
as you know, our revolutionary Pan-Africanist Kwame Ture was speaking, and he was talking about the reactionary bloc. I was just thinking, I was like, yo, wasn't those the French-speaking countries, man? We gotta watch out for them French-speaking Africans, man. Nah, just joking.
We got two
I'm
of them.
joking.
No,
Like, hold up, wait a minute. Nah. Hey, what's going on though, man? Feels good to be here.
Yeah.
Glad to have you. Actually, speaking of French-speaking countries, African countries, I have a story. We actually getting into stories, so.
I got here just in time. All right.
And the story really connects a lot to what Kwame Ture was saying in the speech. So, I think I'll pull up the story and then we could discuss after and make connections between the story and what Kwame Ture is talking about.
I already got my
Sounds
notebook.
good. Sounds good.
So let me share my screen real quick for us, just so the people can see. So for the story, one of the stories that we're covering in particular, this one, I know it's kind of blocked off here, but it says Burkina Faso, more than 350 persons arrested for spying and terrorism. And so basically, on October 18th, Burkina Faso authorities announced the arrest of more than 350 people accused of hostile behavior and terrorist spying. It was known here today from official sources, as the report says, as well as it says, according to the statement issued by by the Burkinabe government information service, several attempts to destabilize institutions carried out by suspects residing in neighboring countries who could have the support of foreign powers have been dismantled in the last weeks. So on September 4th to October 4th of this year, security forces arrested 358 persons for the acts of hostile behavior and espionage of a terrorist nature throughout the national territory. So these attacks against the city of Barcelongo in Burkina Faso.
Enlarge that so that we could see
Make it a little bit bigger.
Yeah, just a little bit. Oh, well, that's big.
Is that good?
Yeah, that works right there.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. All right. So I don't know, I want people to be able to see. So the terrorist attacks against the city of Barcelongo in Burkina Faso was carried out last August 24th, and that was where hundreds of people were died. And the group that is responsible for that is the Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wal Muslim, the J-Neem group, linked to Al-Qaeda. And so it also talked about how the J-Neem group got into Burkina Faso from neighboring Mali. And so, this kind of, because of these types of attacks within Burkina Faso, we know as this article says, back in 2022, that triggered destabilization within a crisis within the country. But acts like what was currently prevented by arresting all these people is the type of stuff that we want to stop, and that obviously Burkina Faso is trying to stop. Right, is trying to stop and get ahead of the game in terms of recognizing the forces that are working to destabilize the mission of Burkina Faso in order for them to be able to continue prospering toward a real liberation for the country. And so I think this article, the reason why I think this is an important article for us to think about and talk about is, like we mentioned before, it's connected so much to what Kwame Ture was talking about in terms of, though our enemies being able to, or those colluding with our enemies being able to walk amongst us, the way that we know that independence movements within Africa were destabilized at their inception, right? they were starting within Africa, from the moment that it was happening, even before then, because we know, like, under colonialism, we know it's about control, right? It's about maintaining control in order of your colony, so that you can continue to exploit and benefit from that exploitation. And so from the beginning, we know that the colonial forces like France, like Belgium, like the United States, like even though, you know, the United States did not have particular colonies within Africa, but because they are aligned with other colonial powers like France and Britain, they support each other in that kind of way. So that's why, you know, you'll see where the CIA helped to help to create the coup that would get that pushed Nkrumah out. So as he was talking about before, so we know that not only are the countries that are actually the ones carrying out the colonial regime in these countries are the ones making sure that they destabilize the country, and they destabilize any movement forward, any real progressive movement forward for these countries from independence. But that we know that they're also in collusion, like, in connection with other countries like the US to help make sure that they support those things, and those things are done the way that they want them to. But yeah, there's so much I can add, but I'll let y'all make some comments on the story as well.
All right. Ikemba, you want to go?
Oh yeah, appreciate the story. And it's definitely a connection to what Kwame Ture was speaking about. And this, when you think, as you was talking about Burkina Faso just now, I'm just thinking about, Congo is another example, as far as just U.S. involvement. The CIA was involved in the overthrow or the assassination, or the overthrow, and then the eventual assassination of Patrice Lumumba, and then putting in this, maniac. What's his name?
Yeah, I have his name. Let me pull it up. Give me a
yeah. I don't even want to remember
Mobutu.
The infamous Mobutu. I don't know how forgot his name, but but this was someone who worked in the interests of the West. Someone who they were comfortable with the atrocities that Mobutu committed against the Congolese, and how he got into power, as long as he was someone that they could count on. And that was the thing with Ghana. These things set us back. The threat to the West is a United States of Africa. A united Africa has always been a threat. When you look at, even you talk about colony. I mean, Liberia, you could say was a U.S. colony at one time. No matter how they say that Liberia was an independent, state. I mean, this is America had tremendous influence over Liberia. So yeah, I think, like, we have to be very careful of those people who are in our midst, the mind, the revolution. And we've seen it in the United States with our Black liberation organizations, and how they have been infiltrated by other Africans working in the interests of the imperialist state. So yeah, I mean, that's why I say we have to make sure that we're supporting Burkina Faso. President Ibrahim, Traore. Hope I'm saying his last name correctly, but making sure that we're supporting him, supporting Mali, Burkina Faso, because what they're doing, what they're creating is it's going to be an example of what we can do as African people when we unite. That's what they're setting that example right now. Just like someone sent me a message the other day, and they were talking about what was going on in East Africa with Ethiopia, Somalia, and yeah, and they was just just the conflict that is going on over there and the division and we're discouraged about Pan-Africanism. It's just like, hey, look, this Pan-Africanism isn't going anywhere. Look at this. And so, I was able to point to the West and, look at what's going on with the Sahel states over here. Let's not forget this, right? And so that's what I'm saying. Like, we need those examples because it can be discouraging for people who are fighting for a united Africa to see this division. So I know I digressed a bit, but again, I think being very mindful of those within our midst that are looking to undermine the struggle for a united Africa, united African front.
Yeah, I would just I know you're gonna say something, but I just wanted to really quickly throw add on to what you were saying, because I know you said, oh, you might have digressed, but I would say no, because I think you're along the lines of the same thing that we're talking about, is the fact that, like, what they want people to do is be discouraged when it comes to Pan-Africanism, right? What they want is to have people feel like, oh, that we're never gonna get there. And so when you're talking about how you're reiterating to people that, like, okay, but here's an example here, and why we need those examples, because of the fact that what they want to do, and part of the reasons why they help to destabilize these countries, is so that you can feel like, oh yeah, this is never going to work. All they do is there's so much tension there, like we're never going to be able to come together and be able to create these things, but that's not true.
Yeah. And to compound on what you guys are saying, when in history has this never occurred where there's spies? I mean, right now, as I'm thinking about all this, individuals that have alluded or conspired to fuck up a liberation or destabilize a region or help destabilize some type of organization. I'm thinking of the likes of Fred Hampton, Senior. That was in the midst of someone infiltrating the organization, i.e. the FBI. As you said, the CIA working in reciprocity with the Congolese government to basically the fact that people don't even really understand that the sheer nature of what they do to some of our ancestors, some of our leaders. The fact that the only thing that's left of Patrice Lumumba is a tooth, and that's wild. I when I look at this, all this is again another fact that we can then throw on the table to justify why imperialism needs and will inevitably fall. There's something that O'Malley Yeshitela talked about in that very famous speech that he gave at Oxford, where he talks about, if we're going to have an African Union, it cannot have any aesthetic of or anybody or any body that is with or about the Western imperial motive. If we're going to have an African united Africa, it's going to look a lot different than what we see the united Africa that people talk about, which is through the lens of imperialism. It's these puppet regimes and these puppet government systems that try and act as if they are working for the best interests of their people, but really they're selling off the most valuable parts and resources, to capitalism. And so them essentially making sure, again, finding out that there are terrorists, there are people who want to conspire. I completely agree. And again, this is a part of decolonization. Again, we have to understand that this is an ever long process. There are going to be time periods where agitation is going to be at bay. They can say, I think I seen an article recently that the last American, troops, so they say, have left Niger. We have to take that for face value because, again, there's spies, there's people who live in the midst of the community to then take notes, do what's needed, and then go and report back to whoever they need to go and report back to. And so them doing this work, them putting themselves in this position to make sure that they're completely obliterating any existence of European and American culture, aesthetic, making sure that imperialism isn't messing with them. I'm all for it. And we do need to align with the Sahel alliance, with every single African alliance that is opposed to imperialism. So that means the EFF as well. We need to stay aligned with the EFF and the values that they cherish and they hold, because again, they understand the root cause of all of this. It's imperialism. They follow in the likelihood of Winnie Mandela. So I have to follow all African resistance forces that are out there fighting against imperialism, point blank. And that's goes for everybody that's down below, in the chat. I hope you agree with that. We're fighting imperialism on all fronts, whether it's here in the occupied territories of Turtle Island, or whether it's in the occupied territories of Palestine, whether it's in the occupied occupied Africa, whether it's, the fact that that there are 1,000 military bases across the globe that inflict damage, harm, cruelty, nothing but famine. They pollute our waters. They pollute our airways and then blame us and charge us for that. And then we're also paying for that by the doomsday clock and life expectancy dwindling, because we're not properly addressing the issues. We're too busy saying, well, the problem is that we don't have a Kamala Harris in office, or we don't have a this in person. It's like, no, it's right in front of you. It's colonialism. It's imperialism. That's what that's
I would also add to that, to what you're saying, that because we know all of this, because we've seen all of this, that, like you're saying, this is not anything new. There's a quote that says the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And so that, when you are either working toward your freedom or you've gained your freedom from, especially when we're thinking about you've gained it from those who have been oppressing you, you have to remain vigilant, right? We see that, like, you can't take your eye off the ball. Like when Kwame Ture said in the video that, he talked about Watts, and he said, they rose up and, and they went against, the enemy in the state, and then they sat down for 29 years. We can't afford to think that, like, okay, we make something happen and we take a step toward where we want to be in terms of liberation, and that, okay, we can, rest and not have to, make sure that we're being vigilant. No, because we're in a continuous, it's not over. Like, you might win a battle, but that doesn't mean the war is over, right? So you need to make sure that you're remaining vigilant, and that when you don't remain vigilant, that's when they continue. Because they're going to continue to come back and try all their tactics, because what they want is to be able to have power over you no matter what, and to be able to profit off of you no matter what. And so in order for you to be able to make sure, like, you're keeping those things at bay, you have to stay vigilant. And so I think that when we think about what's happening in Burkina Faso, I think we also have to think about it too in connection, like make those connections. How does what we're seeing there and the ways in which they have taken steps toward, real national liberation, and how can we apply that to us when we're thinking about the steps, what people would call the steps forward that we've made, but because we're not being vigilant, that, and realizing that the oppression isn't over, colonialism is over, imperialism isn't over, that the state and those who seek to align with the state for their own gain will come back and, quote unquote, take those gains away. So it's making me think of when we think about affirmative action, when people are like, oh, well, look at affirmative action. Those are things, or even people. Another example could be when people talk about the Voting Rights Act, right? And so how people are now, have been talking for the last couple of years about the Voting Rights Act being attacked. Well, even when we think about gains that we've made, when we think about Black studies, for example, at one point you had Black studies professors that were really revolutionary and really radical within the institutions, but you don't have those anymore because the state is always going to fight back against you trying to move towards your liberation. So you can never take your eye off the ball. And so you always have to, remain vigilant, and you always have to be, looking and seeing who are those internal enemies that exist that are aligning with the state against their own interests and against your best interest as well. And that makes me, I think it was either Akimba or you, Isaac, who said the thing about, how within the Congo, you have all of these, rich minerals that, they were going after. So of course they're going to make sure that, they maintain control of the Congo by any cost. And I was looking into just like the number of assassinations that have happened within Africa when we think about liberation movements. And I came across some research that talked about how the atomic bomb, right? What is it called? The uranium that they use for the atomic bomb was from the Congo. And I'll read this specific little specific piece that it says. It says that there was a focus particularly on Cinco Lobwe, the world's biggest uranium mine in the Congolese Katanga province. Of crucial geostrategic importance. In the 1940s, it supplied the Manhattan Project, which produced the first atomic bombs, which we know, devastated Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and that Cinco Lobwe remained the main resource in the American nuclear arming of the 1950s. So when we think about the ways in which they, the imperialists make sure that they stabilize not just countries, but also communities in order for them to be able to get the materials or exploit the people in order for them to be able to get whatever, monetary or money or resources that they want in order for them to do the destructive things that they do in the world today. So even just thinking about the atomic bomb, right? And when people think about nuclear warfare and, America arming itself in terms of nuclear war, they're getting, in order for them to even do that, they need to get the materials, and where they're getting those and where they're getting them and where they got them from was Congo, at the expense of the liberation of the Congolese, at the expense of, at the expense of Patrice Lumumba being executed, and at the expense of the people within the country being able to survive, being able to have just, a good standard of living. So I think the depth of what comes out of them being successful and destabilizing communities in our countries is really important, and how that leads directly to them being able to carry out the types of atrocities, not just on us that they want to, right, but on other countries. You assassinate Patrice Lumumba, you destabilize that country in order for you to then what? Create one of the worst things that could have been created in all of human history, so that you can drop it on another group of people that you're oppressing.
Well, that's imperialism. It's mass escalation. It's mass escalation. That means you as the masses want us to invent an engine that that's ran by water. Okay, but we're gonna make sure that it's military grade first before we do it. If they could bottle air, which I'm pretty sure there's a company that fucking has,
they're working on it.
They do it. They do that shit in a heartbeat, and they call it O'Hare Air, like they did in the Lorax. They would it would definitely do it.
If the air is so polluted, they need to using oxygen as have a tank. Just saying hypothetically, that would be a way that they can control the air that you breathe, because your survival will be based off of like having these oxygen tanks, but you would have to pay for it though. You know what I'm saying? I seen a lot of sci-fi movies.
No. You're onto something, because pretty soon we're all gonna be like Dune, where we wearing them water suits and we're recycling because they didn't fucked up our waterways and shit.
Yeah.
You know, that's gonna be us pretty soon. Just letting everybody know.
Yeah,
they already are on it if they put it in a movie. So
yeah, but there was a lot of Natasha, that you made, particularly like one of the last points that you made in regards to just like the white people's existence, man. When you think about it, like their very existence today has come at the expense of African people. Like they owe their existence today to African people, indigenous people, right? Oppressing the people. And I'm not saying that to say that, these people wouldn't exist without Africans and so forth, right? But those like hypotheticals. Like the reality is that there was a relationship between the European and the African that was forged, through colonialism, through imperialism, right? And the taking of indigenous people land. So they were able to develop, their society, the idea, the theoretical frameworks that came as a result of all of that, to just their attempt to explain the world, right? All of that came through this relationship forged between them and African people, right? Trying to explain that, explain the atrocities away, explain their position and their existence as white people, in this world, and why they represent a civilized and superior race, right? So they've been constantly trying to explain their existence as well as sort of like the objects of human existence, and explain everyone else's existence. And so that's something that we have to be very conscious of, right? Everything, the material, the material gains from it, and even the abstract abstract ideas that they have, the abstract reality, all of that comes at our expense. So the other thing though, there were some points that you made as far as like affirmative action. You were talking about affirmative action and voting rights, right? And these concessions that are made, right? And that got my attention as well, because it's those concessions we have to be mindful. And this kind of going, you had brought up Caitlin Clark the other day, right? And I had some thoughts on, and I want to talk. Hey, if I can, just like, and the reason why I'm bringing up, both of these things up, what we have to be mindful of, and many of us aren't as colonized people, is that and people who are victims of colonialism as well as racism, like we're subjected to these things, right? And when we don't understand, like we live in a society that's dominated by white, politically, economically, socially dominated by white folks, and so we're looking for these concessions, and we sometimes make these gains. But there's this pushback. We don't understand like why there's push, or why there's even struggle for these material gains that we're looking for. And so when it comes to voting rights, and what there's this pushback, and you come to a period of time where the Voting Rights Act is now is ruled, not ruled, but the Voting Rights Act is no longer in effect, right? Like where states are able to decide their elections. Some states are able to decide, how the rules of their elections, right? Or affirmative action, how the meaning or who it benefits changes over time, and at some point where that will be affirmative action be longer considered or whatever, right?
Mhm.
I guess like the point I'm making, and I bring Caitlin Clark into this is because people are talking about um, um, racism and so forth, and Caitlin Clark is getting all of this support, and black players were doing this. We have to understand, like white people are going to support their own. White people are going to support their own interests. Like you are out here looking for white people to support you the same way that they support another white person. Like and I get it. Like, okay, you play better. Things should be equal. Like in a perfect world, that would be the case. But this is a system that's dominated by folks, and they're not to work in your interests. They're going to work in their own interests and support their own before they support you. So when it comes to any sort of legal action that is going to our policy that's going to support black folks, white folks are going to overwhelmingly be against that, and they'll bring up the Constitution, 14th Amendment. You know what I'm saying? You can't come up with you can't create any laws or anything on the books that are for a particular race because of equal protection clause, on the 14th Amendment. That's something that they can bring up. But I know that was like a long about way, but the point is, man, like, we're in a white dominated society. We need to create our own. We, just the same way that we would support our own and our own interests, and understanding that, population wise, we represent a minority as far as number wise, because we're not a minority, but population wise, we're a smaller population, and that's why white folks are going to overwhelmingly support their own before they support us. And so, yeah, on the surface, we can say, hey, this is racist, racism and so forth. No, they doing what they supposed to be doing, at least, and from their perspective, if it was a black dominated system, we'd probably be, it'd be black flag, we would be supporting, and we do that, but we don't represent a large majority, within this racist system, if that makes sense, man. I don't know.
No,
I know that was a lot.
I'm gonna, before we get go to Sudan, I actually want to stay on this topic if we can, on this reverse racism, because we don't see a whole lot of topics.
Yeah, I knew I was going to get them started.
Yeah, you were. I don't know why you bring that white girl's name up. I don't know why you did. You already knew I was on top, or I was on her ass like white on rice.
I just get frustrated when we looking for other people to support us like they support. Yeah, of course. Like, you forgot what type of society we live in,
And I think it's part of when we're talking about vigilance, right? When we're talking about remaining vigilant and being on the, having your head on a swivel to, I'm trying to figure out, what's the way I can, simplify that term. But when we're talking up, you have to know what you're being vigilant about. Right? You can't, it's not like, fine, yeah, I'm going to be vigilant and just be vigilant about, like, okay, you're constantly on the watch for, where is, America expanding its empire to, or something like that, where you think that is part of your interest, or, you focus your vigilance on, the material things that they've convinced us that we, need to consume in excess, or stuff like that. Like, your vigilance needs to be clear. It can't be clouded by false ideas of where we actually, like you're saying, Akimba, where we actually are and what our situation actually is, because our reality has been deliberately distorted so that we think that we live in a reality where we came into this country as immigrants, right? That everybody, our ideas that everybody came into this country as immigrants. The country started as immigrants. This is an immigrant, the story of an immigrant nation, and so therefore, we're on this straight path to progress, and us as Black people, we're with that, and we just came here on the Mayflower, and now we're working our way toward getting to where we need to be, and so we expect certain things because of this clouded and distorted idea of the actual situation we're in. And so therefore we're confused when, like you're saying, things don't happen, but it's because we have a distorted idea and we don't know what we should be looking at or looking for, because they told us to look to the right when we should be looking to the left, or looking to the left when we should be looking to the right, or just
Not
looking
at all.
Yeah, not looking at all. Exactly.
Just very quickly,
I want to pulling up news stories. Oh man,
I'm pulling out something.
Got this man started.
I wanted to go over this in particular, because you do bring up a good position, and it's actually something that's missing from this article. I
know it is. Because I don't hear nobody talking about it when they bring up.
Here, Kwame Nkrumah, a leading Pan-Africanist, articulated the interconnectedness in his work-class struggle in Africa. He stated that the essence of neocolonialism is that the state, which is subject to it, is in theory independent and has all the outward trappings of international sovereignty. In reality, its economical system and thus its political policy is directed from the outside. Applying Nkrumah's analysis to the situation in the United States, we see how economic and racial oppression are intertwined, when media narratives often serving to uphold this dual exploitation. So again, when we look at it through that narrative, reverse racism, or we look at, Caitlin Clark is being quote unquote racially profiled, it doesn't make any sense, because we live under a colonial construct that aids and abets the term racism because it needs it to survive. And so when I look at everybody out there saying, like how you said, the league should respect its black players, its African players more, it should give it more credit. It's not going to, because it's not set up that way. And even then, so me covering the WNBA since almost 2018, I have been able to uncover that it is one of the most racist fucking leagues in out of all the leagues in there, because of what Caitlin Clark has been able to produce. They found that golden goose. They found that girl. What was the narrative in 2017? That all of these women were sleeping with each other and they didn't give a shit about basketball. That's what the narrative was. It was rooted in white supremacist, white hegemonic talking points that fueled this narrative that these individuals didn't give a shit about playing the game of basketball. And in part, what did those then said teammates do, or those said individuals? They bought into this idea that it's if they just speak out a little bit, the league will be a little bit, the league will have a little bit more equity, have a little bit more equality. That's not how that works. Caitlin Clark is going to continue to ignore the fact that she herself has benefited off of this whole entire issue of reverse racism, so much to the fact that someone who has won 4 WNBA championships and actually stands on the right side of history and saying what's going on in Palestine needs to stop, and Cheryl Swoops, was silenced by the WNBA because she critiqued the situation and called it for what it was. There is no such thing as reverse racism. And so we live in a society where this narrative is consistently propelled. You can go to this article that I reference right here, and it's on Substack, and I quote Kwame Nkrumah, I quote Frantz Fanon, I quote Angela Davis, I quote Gramsci, I quote a multitude of individuals, and give my own personal analysis to how this is just fucking atrocious. It doesn't make any sense. It's riddled in nonsense. And so I just wanted to highlight that, because we did talk about it yesterday. And so
indeed, we did. And I love that. I unite with that to a certain extent. I guess like my my criticism with it all, not just with, I see it across the board, right? So it's not just in women's basketball in particular, we was talking.
No, I make that claim in there about how ESPN works in reciprocity for all sports. Like I had another one.
Yeah, but I'm not just talking about just. I'm not just talking about even sports. It's in the business world. Yeah, capitalism. Period. Colonial capitalism. And what I see, the frustrating part for me is that the struggle. Yes, you're struggling against racism, to integrate into the system, the colonial capitalist system, the system of oppression and exploitation. So, it's not to like really dismantle the system. You want to get the same rewards as the colonizer. That's what it's about. You want to be able to get the same rewards, same benefits as the colonizer. So it's not really about the masses of African people.
No, it's not. It never was.
It's not, and that's my thing. I understand calling out, the system for what it is, but you calling out the system. This is the same. This is why we have criticisms with civil rights, right? With the civil rights, movement. So, it's the same thing. We have to have that same smoke when we see it, happening right here in women's basketball or within any sport. Same way that we would have it, with people who are fighting, wanting to, have benefits with Amazon, be a part of Amazon, be a part of Walmart, and of course, nothing against like the workers, trying to get their bread. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, like we're gonna critique.
Kimber said, I don't want none of that smoke.
I don't want none of that smoke.
But I understand what you're saying, because I mean, but I think it's always important to be clear, because you don't want anybody to mistake in where your critique is aimed at.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Yeah. The critique is definitely not aimed at the workers, man. But but we have to. This is what political education is about. Is raising the consciousness with folks. So even in that struggle, they understand like this isn't the end game. This isn't the objective, and you'll be able to see it in their actions. And I don't be seeing it in a lot of people's actions, like especially in certain situations. Everybody is black. They pull the black card. Oh, you black now. That's where you was an individual before. And this is what H. Rap Brown, or Jamil, Al-Amin. I remember him saying this at one time, right? When he was talking about, people talking about I'm doing my own thing, and as soon as they get in trouble, you're gonna find yourself like out there right by yourself. You know what I'm saying? And so that's what happens, man.
Yeah, and you can't wait till you get into a situation where you need the support of the people at large to then say like, oh, I'm with the people. I see the larger. The larger
Now you want to call out racism.
Exactly. When people are saying it's a larger struggle, and those people who are constantly trying to raise the contradictions so that you can see, don't ignore them, right? Because because you don't know whose number is going to be called when. It don't matter. Like you never know if it's you, the person who is doing their own thing, or for somebody who's in the struggle that's gonna be a victim of police violence or state violence. Like you don't know, so you don't know. You shouldn't wait until or doubt what they're saying, or say like, oh, okay, well that's happening, but I'm gonna just do my own thing over here, because it's all interconnected. Like we're seeing, if it's interconnected internationally, you better believe it's interconnected locally.
Yeah, no, I completely agree to that. Did you guys want to go to a quick break before we get to this last segment?
Yeah, let's take a Black Power break.
I'm sure we went over that hour y'all probably was planning. I already know how Isaac get there.
Exactly. You already know Ikemba came strapped already. He already he knew this. He didn't know the assignment yesterday, but he's very much aware of the assignment today. So no, we'll be back with a break before this or after this break for Black Power. I think we're gonna stick with some.
We're gonna stick on the continent.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Okay, I'm gonna give y'all some extra time today. Okay, we're gonna go with Dr. Ani speaking on I actually forgot which one this was, so Enjoy this break for Black Power. We'll be back in a sec.
Were committing biological genocide against us, and that by the year 2000 whatever there would be no more black people, you would get one reaction. But you're saying that we're being threatened with cultural and psychological extinction. How do you get African people to see the urgency of the situation?
I don't know, frankly, if you can. I think that we have to focus on young people, young African people who have not been so conditioned with a way of thinking that supports European imperialism, European power, that they still have the ability to use their intuition, their spirituality, their Africanness to create, to think beyond the limitations that have been given to them in European academies. I think most of us as adults, as elders, have been so conditioned that we're afraid to move beyond the parameters that have been defined by our enemies in our thinking, so that our vision is limited. And so we are really not the people who should be conceptualizing the plans, the movements, what we should be building. But I focus on the younger people who hopefully are still more in touch with what is natural to African people. And if I can affirm that in them, they will see the urgency. I find that in my teaching. I find that in teaching young people, that once they are affirmed and introduced in a conscious way to the African worldview, it becomes crystal clear to them. And they see in an urgency in us as African people building for self, as opposed to imitating forms which have been put in place to make sure that we continue to be oppressed.
Culturally and psychologically, do you think we realize what we have lost?
No, not. It's ironic because we don't realize it on a conscious level. Yet we live it every day, in the way we walk, in the way we talk, in the way in the music we create. There is a depth of spirituality which exists in us as a people, which has continued since our origins, that our ancestors have passed to us, and which we continue to pass on ourselves, that we don't consciously recognize as a strength. We don't realize that it is something that we need to use to think with, so that when we are presented with a European worldview in the classroom, we think that that's the only way to be. That's the only way to think, because we didn't come with anything. So I don't think that we are aware on a conscious level of what it is that we've moved away from in terms of power. You see, that's what we're not aware of.
Could you talk some about how we came to be who and what we are today? If you understand the question.
I think I do.
Okay.
I think that we have to look back at a period that I call the Ma'afa. We as Africans were very consciously stripped of our culture. Now, that becomes a platitude. You know, everybody's saying that. Stripped of our culture, but we have to see that we had a strong culture and so forth. But nobody seems to realize the depth of what that means. Being stripped of our culture meant being conditioned to accept ourselves as inferior beings. Okay? It meant that we were conditioned to feel that we had to be dependent on Europeans, dependent on white people, that we could not do things for ourselves and in our own image. That conditioning began with a long period of terrorism, which was very physical, physically manifested. At the same time, there was the breaking of the will. So there was cultural violence, I call it, in the book, as well as the physical violence, which was very important. We then came to a period in which we mistakenly thought we were free. We're now at a point where we think that we have freedom, the ability to be whatever it is that we can be within this society and so forth. Yet what happens is that we are still thinking within a modality that has been determined by those who would oppress us, those who would control us. And we don't see beyond that. So the question for me becomes, who controls how you think? We have the ability to create our own structures, our own theories, our own definitions of reality, to look at the African worldview, to look at, for instance, the Dogon people, to look at the Kemetic people, to look at our own people who have, even look at Carter G. Woodson, for instance, the miseducation of the Negro, which I don't think was really ever understood by us, and to use these things as inspirations for the building of institutions, the creation of things, the building our own buildings. We have the ability to do that. So it's almost like we've been conditioned so well through such a long process that now it is us who are enslaving ourselves mentally.
Because the job has already been...
The job has been done. It would be so easy, in one sense, for us to undo it. That's what I'm saying in this book. Because the way the system of European control works is that you have to accept a concept of reality which makes them superior.
You got scared there, didn't you? Huh?
Hey, I was about to say, thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed. Hope you enjoyed the show. Yeah.
Nah. All right. So I hope you guys enjoyed that break. We're gonna get right into it, as I'm pretty sure you guys are tired of hearing us giggle. No, I'm just
Yo, man. Before you have me all self-conscious. Nah, I can't, man.
I'm not gonna read all the way through this article, so I'm gonna just go in depth via my notes that I've been taking as we've been talking. And so I try to look at this from a decolonial perspective. In this article, it states that the defection of the senior RSF commander, like Kakal, to the Sudanese armed forces highlights the complexity of Sudan's conflict, deeply rooted in colonial legacies of militarization and resource extraction. Both the RSF and SAF have inherited and perpetuated power structures formed under colonial rule, where control over people and resources has been violently enforced through militarization. This defection, while framed by the SAF as a quote unquote moral boost and a weakening of the RSF, might not signify a true disruption of these deeper systems of oppression. So again, when we talk about Sudan, we have to understand that this is two opposing forces that for long periods of time have been fighting for military for military rule. I go on, this article goes on to state the Sudan's conflict cannot be viewed solely as an internal, or at least that's what I'm thinking. That's what I wrote down. Internal power struggle, the external involvement of nations like Egypt, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, each with vested interests in Sudan's resources and strategic location, echoes the legacies of colonial powers profiting from African conflicts. And so Ikemba, if I'm not mistaken, I believe I have to say maybe like 6 or 7 rise ups ago, we talked about this, if I'm not correct, right? Where me and you made that kind of conflation is like, okay, where they're using to have these proxy wars, they're using African nations to then, in part play all that out. And so I just wanted to highlight that this is something that the Rise Up show has highlighted extensively. From a decolonial analysis, would argue that these foreign influences exacerbate divisions within Sudan, further destabilizing the nation for profit and geopolitical control rather than genuinely working towards peace. Moreover, the humanitarian crisis in Sudan, with millions displaced and facing famine, mirrors the colonial era exploitation, where local populations bore the brunt of violence, instability, and impoverishment for the gain of external powers. And so we, in this conversation today, have talked about that extensively. So it's no different in regards to Sudan and the genocide that's going on there. The ongoing famine, millions displaced. Again, we have millions displaced all over the board. The fact that I think the number in Lebanon went from 1 million to like 1 point now, almost 2 million people displaced just in a matter of a couple of weeks. Again, mass escalation, you can align that with imperialism. That's one of its main benefactors. By focusing on military gains or defections, the narrative in mainstream media may obscure the deeper issues. Sudan's suffering is a continuation of colonial dynamics that prioritize profit and control over the well-being of its people. Again, that's what's going on in the Congo. So again, everything that's going on in Sudan it could be parallel to what's going on in the Congo, to what's parallel to what's going on in Palestine. Just in this case, they don't get resources from Palestine. They want the resources that are under it, which is the oil. I had a conversation with you yesterday in regards to what they want, the land as well. They want mass expansion because that's how imperialism works.
Yeah.
So in short, I cite that through a decolonial lens, the defection of a commander is less about shifting the balance of power and more about the continuation of a system that has marginalized and exploited Sudanese people since the colonial era. The war is not just a battle between SAF and RSF, but it's a manifestation of ongoing external influence and control, i.e., American European imperialism. So that's just relatively what that article was going over, and I gave my interpretation along with that on how this is nothing more than it doesn't really show anything, but it does highlight the fact that there are interests. Hold on, my bad. There are interests, as there always has been, of resources and extraction, and they do it by either means of militarization, co-opting, Sudanese, actual Sudanese people to do this to their own people. The government system, whether it's through paramilitary coups, whether it's through exactly what happened in 2021 in Sudan. And so I'd like to get your thoughts, at least on how I perceive the situation in Sudan in regards to it. Is that I really don't care that a commander retreated, because we still have millions of fucking children and women and men that are displaced, have no home, or living under famine, and are being subjugated, to exploitation on, levels that we haven't seen before.
Yeah, I mean, we've covered this a few times. I mean, we had even had some comrades from the Sudanese Liberation Front on here to give us what's going on, what's happening in Sudan, giving it to us from a Sudanese perspective, right? And I've covered it a few times on We Charge Colonialism. I think it's it's tragic what's happening in Sudan and just the response, the international response to what's taking place. But people do have the problem is that people have a material interest in Sudan that is creating conflict with opposing forces, not just in Sudan but outside of Sudan. And so when you have competing forces, competing forces from the outside, able to influence what's happening inside, there's going to be this sustaining of hostilities, the sustaining of this conflict, man. They're exacerbating what's taking place there. And so at the same time that they're exacerbating the crisis in Sudan, they're coming with their hands, arms full of aid, and and gifts. I'll say gifts, but they coming with like, bearing gifts like, here, this is to help you guys, but you're the same people who are instigating this crisis. That's what I'm seeing. And this is why, like, the struggle is anti-colonial. It has to be an anti-colonial capitalist, struggle, man. It's ultimately capitalism that's driving this conflict and the many other conflicts that take place around the world. And of course, like, there's the sort of, I guess, like, the influence. There's ethnic or racial influences that may exist, but these are people, the ruling class plays on these divisions. That's what capitalism does, man. It exploits divisions and causes turmoil between groups of people, because it weakens the people, it weakens the masses, man. This is why you can have someone, a Zion. You can essentially have a Zionist who will fund both sides of the conflict in Lebanon, with Hezbollah. If you really start following the money, you'll begin to see, like, there's people who are part of the same, quote unquote ethnic group, race, religion, who are on both sides of the conflict. Funding both sides of the conflict. You can look at what's happening in Sudan. I mean, there are people who are Arabs who are funding both sides of the conflict, right? There's Europeans who are funding both sides of the conflict. So at the end of the day, man, like, this is an anti-colonial capitalist struggle, and we can't be divided on that. We have to have a collective front, no matter what ethnic, religion, race you proclaim. We have to be united against our common enemy. Capitalism cannot survive anywhere on the planet in order for people to be free. Capitalism anywhere is a threat to liberation or freedom everywhere. And that has to be our mentality, because socialism, the capitalist understands that, collectivism, socialism is a threat to capitalism. That's why they are always undermining socialism, are people who proclaim to be socialists wherever they are, around the world. We've been seeing, the history of that. People who are not even socialists, who are consorting with socialists, man, could find themselves in trouble, right? Because the capitalists see that threat. So we have the same vigilance. Hey, I know I kind of like over But yeah, that's my thoughts on that, man.
Spitting. You were spitting. I was I was gonna see if you had anything that you wanted to bring to the table. I don't know if you had an article. If not, then I mean we could close out, because I think, you know, for the most part, me and you are on the same tip when it comes to the ongoing struggles in Sudan, the ongoing struggles in Congo. You know, it has to be anti-colonial. And so, you know, as much as this, you know, that might look or seem to be as like a quantitative action, you know, we inevitably are looking for the end result, which is, you know, the liberation of the Sudanese people that, you know, are going through some of the worst things, you know, known to man, famine, you know, on a mass level, millions of people displaced. And so, you know, I think we know what the common, you know, goal is and what's at stake, you know, and how we get there. So I want to say thank you for watching, everybody. Ikemba for joining. This is second day. Me and Ikemba have closed out. So
there it is, man. Hey, we got to make a habit out of this.
Exactly. And we got to have some more basketball topics too. You know, all these reframing and whatnot.
Yeah.
You know, I
sure.
think sports, you know, coming at, you know, sports from a decolonial perspective is always something that I've done. So I'd like to, you know, hopefully add that as like a segment where we bring a perspective that's decolonial, and it's like, hey, well, look, this doesn't seem right.
Hey, we might have to bring some of them folks up on here too, man. Like,
I know
connect with.
I know that we have some said connection to Mahmoud Abdul Rauf, so that'd be great. Craig Hodges is an individual too that you know, we could have on in conversation.
What about Caitlin Clark, man? Bring her.
We're gonna get the hell out of here, y'all. Like, share, subscribe, do all that stuff. Subscribe to our Patreon. We're out of here.
Man. Rise up.
Sometimes the riot is a quiet one. Well, the battle is to love yourself and function in society where voices of reason are muted by anxiety, like gaining notoriety is selling your soul. So we tend to go no deeper than the shallow water level, trying to keep us overhead in the face of all the slurs and the stares, mentally frozen, paralyzed by fear of failure and success. So we lock, stock, barrel, running while it's crumbling. All these towers and they're babbling, but the baby's in the bath and the stash under the bed. On my head, spinning from the circles and the puppets and the strings that they pull, then we move. Reactionary warfare never produces when it's on the field. Feeble and foolish, what tools and what weapons are we using? We need some new ones. Real revolution, it's real solutions. Well, we've taken on the ways of the ones who conquer with their guns and religion and division. Got my inner me looking like my enemy. Real revolution. Well, my inner me, really a mirror for the galaxy. New time, brand new paradigms, new contracts to sign. They thought that this would all be televised, though it's happening right before our very eyes. It's on the inside, with their guns cocked. When that rock drops, standing on the rooftop, praying that the mountaintop can live inside the valley. People tell me the reward is somewhere off in heaven, like heaven's only in the sky. A chariot's a swinging, like God is something separate from yourself, from your wealth, from your lover, from your neighbor. Oh, your savior, it's coming in your own name, coming with the face the same. Real revolution, it's real solutions. Well, we've taken on the ways of the ones who conquer with their guns and religion and division. Got my inner me looking like my enemy. Real revolution, where my enemy is really a mirror for the galaxy.